Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Dr. B Teaches and the 7th Generation Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. B. This is my first episode of 2025. I can't believe that 2024 is in the books. And I wanted to start the new year off talking about something that's really personal to me, which is my health and my wellness, and share a little bit about my journey training Jiu Jitsu and trying to improve my health, reduce stress, all the things that we should be focusing in on. I'm 53 years old now, and I'm going to be 54 in 2025, so I am slowing down a little bit. I've always been active, going all the way back to my childhood, involved in sports. Even in my 20s, I was always hiking, playing basketball, doing something physical. I started training Jiu Jitsu in my early 30s, and I've been training for over 20 years now. But as a 53-year-old, I'm starting to slow down just a little bit, and I'm doing my best now to reduce the stress, because what I've realized is over the years, as you age and you get a little bit older, it's better to prioritize getting good sleep, reducing stress, eating better. And I just want to share some of the things that I've done in my life that I feel like have improved my health and wellness, and also talk about some of the things that I haven't done so well, because being healthy is not easy, especially in this world that we live in. And there's been times where my life has just been way too chaotic and way too stressful, and I've just taken on too much. And there's also been times where I've had to deal with physical injuries that I sustained training Jiu Jitsu. And what I've learned now is that I have to be smart about the way that I train, the way that I live. And the earlier you start, the better. And for my Native American listeners, or those of you who follow me for my Indigenous content, I also want to talk about how we can learn a lot from our Indigenous ancestors and how they lived their lives, because Native people were the healthiest people on the planet prior to 1492. And after settler colonialism sets in, our health begins to decline dramatically, and it has everything to do with colonization and all the policies that were meant to eliminate indigenous people. But prior to the onset of colonization, we had really great health and wellness systems that can still benefit us today here in 2025. So this episode's going to be a little bit different because it's just me opening up about my personal experiences and reflections. So let's get into it. Let me start with a little bit of context about my own health journey. I am 53 years old and I'm in pretty good health. I went to go see my doctor recently and had some blood work done, and everything came back really, really good. I did suffer a pretty serious back injury. I ruptured a disc back in June of 2024, this last year. So I've been dealing with that for the last 6 months, and I have a sciatic nerve issue. The disc is pushing up against a nerve, and it's affecting my left leg, and have numbness in my foot. It's been really frustrating because I haven't been able to train Jiu Jitsu, and I haven't been able to do some of the things that I enjoyed doing, like hiking and running. Anything that's too impactful in my body, I've had to just stop doing, just to make sure that I don't aggravate that disc and that nerve. Anyway, it's been really painful at times not being able to train, because jiu-jitsu is such a big part of my life. So I have faced some recent challenges, but overall, my health has always been pretty good, and it has a lot to do with the fact that I've tried to prioritize it. Now, by all means, I have not been perfect. And that's what I want to talk about, is just how difficult this can be. And I really empathize with people who are struggling to lose weight, or they're struggling with health issues. And I just want to share with you just some of the things that I've tried to do to make positive changes in my life. And maybe you can adapt some of those things as well. I also want to talk about stress management, which is something that I've really sucked at. I feel like my whole life has been stressful, going all the way back as a kid, dealing with poverty and being raised by parents who have their own unresolved traumas that can create all kinds of stress in our children, in our families. And I think when you're raised up in those stressful environments, that's all you know, and you just kind of get used to it. And I never really figured out how to manage stress. And what I realized as I got older is that stress was a killer. And I had to learn to be able to manage my stress a little bit better. And this is something that I haven't always done very well, particularly just because I live a pretty fast paced life, like all of you who are probably listening to this, because you kind of have to in this Western world. It's hard to slow down because to be able to make it, you have to get out there and you have to hustle. And, coming from a humble background, trying to make it through college, make it through grad school, then entering into a professional field that can be toxic at times, definitely took its toll on me. And then just family life, just life in general, just living in this Western world can be really difficult, especially for Native people and other people of color, just having to navigate through microaggressions and racism. This can really take its toll on an individual. So I've had to learn a lot of hard lessons about stress management and taking myself out of situations that are stressful and leaving behind relationships that are toxic. And this is something that's really, really hard for some people, including myself. So I've had to make it a point to prioritize my social and my psychological well-being. And that's something that I think we often forget about when it comes to health and wellness. A lot of us, we think about being healthy. It's about the food that we eat and it's about exercise. But there's that social component to it, which is something that many of us often fail at. And I know I have failed at it miserably. And something I've had to do over the years is just back away from certain relationships and try to surround myself with people that I know care and love me and want to see me have a good life. And that's something that I haven't always done, unfortunately. So I want to switch gears here and talk about our Indigenous ancestors. As Native people, we come from communities that were some of the healthiest individuals on earth. We had really great diets and we had active lifestyles. It didn't matter if you were living in a hunting and gathering society or an agricultural society. Native people were always moving, eating really, really well. And also our health and wellness extended beyond the physical. It was also spiritual, and we had a deep connection to our homelands, to the sacred places that were central to our spiritual outlook. And so the whole mind, body, spirit connection, I think, was really on point when it came to our Indigenous communities. And of course, colonization disrupts all of that. The traditional foods that Native people consumed that were incredibly healthy. And again, all Native societies are different. Definitely did not eat the same food. And so some Native societies were primarily hunter-gatherer based. Some Native societies focused more on agriculture. But one thing for sure, we were incredibly healthy. No diabetes, no obesity, all the different health issues that are epidemics now in Indigenous communities were non-existent. Heart disease, high blood pressure, the stress of living in a settler colonial society that is basically trying to eliminate your culture. We aren't dealing with any of that. And of course, those traditional foods were replaced with government issued rations, native lifeways, including the food that Indigenous people ate was also criminalized. And so this disruption and those traditional values, that traditional way of living, still affects us today. And that's something that I have had to educate myself on. And I've really tried my best to take from the old values of the way that our ancestors lived and to try to apply those to my life here today. And it's not always easy to do that because we live in a world that isn't really reflective of Indigenous values. But I think for Native people out there who want to improve their health and wellness, there's so much that we can learn from Indigenous peoples. So for me, reclaiming good health has been also about honoring my ancestors. And like I said, we were very, very healthy. And I really try to be a good example for my family, for my kids. And when I think about my own personal health and well-being, I don't just think about myself. I also think about the people that I'm surrounded around. And I want to try my best to be a good example to them. And it's not always easy to do that, especially if we're talking about eating a healthy diet. But one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give Native people is do your best to try to eat like your ancestors. Consume the foods that kept them healthy since time immemorial. And that's something that I had to learn how to do as I got older. When I was in my 20s and I was in college, I started to gain a little bit of weight. I remember going to the doctor and they always, weigh you. And I was looking at the scale, I was looking at the number. I'm like, this cannot be right. And that was the first time anybody ever told me, hey, maybe you should think about losing a little bit of weight. But I had never, up until that point, ever thought about losing weight. And I didn't even know how to do that. And I grew up eating what was ever put in front of you. And you eat until everything's gone because you didn't know if tomorrow you were even going to have a meal. And unfortunately, we are biologically wired not to turn down food, any kind of food. And so if you live in a world where you have all this abundance of food that isn't very healthy, it's really easy to gain weight. So I started to gain weight like in my late 20s. And it took me a while to figure out how to eat well. But one of the things that worked for me, and like I said, I had to do a lot of experimenting. I started to eat more protein and just reduce carbohydrates. And of course, move more. And that combination really worked well for me. So whenever I prioritize eating protein, eating salmon or beef and eggs, and reducing my carb intake, taking out the pastas, taking out the breads, taking out the rice, all those grains, my weight would either stabilize or I would start to lose weight. And so that was the formula that worked for me. And don't get me wrong, my weight has gone like this. And there's another component, I just talked about it, is stress. So you can eat well and you could be exercising, but if you are stressed out and you're not sleeping, you can still gain weight. And a lot of it has to do with your cortisol levels. If you are stressed out, you're not sleeping, even if you're working out and even if you're eating well, you can either gain weight, or if you're trying to lose weight, it can be really, really difficult. And so that's something I had to learn too, is just to prioritize my sleep, especially as I've gotten older. So when I prioritize sleep and I reduce my stress, I eat well, and I move, I either stabilize my weight or I can drop a few pounds. But it's not easy to do that. And I don't think it's easy because I have fallen off plenty of times where my life has just gotten too stressful and maybe I'm eating too much. I think it goes back to the way that we are literally biologically wired not to turn down food, because we lived in hunter-gatherer societies for most of our life. And when you found food, you ate. And I think it's also a big part of our culture as well. We just eat a lot. And so this is not a good thing if you are living in a world of abundance, especially if what is readily available isn't very healthy for you. And there's just so much out there that's easily accessible that isn't good for us. And for Native people, our diets were always so healthy, and we didn't have all this processed foods in our diet. And of course, we're placed on reservations and we're given government rations. And all these colonial foods just have destroyed our health. And so when I started getting back to eating like my ancestors, man, I saw a reduction in weight and I just felt better about myself. And that's why I feel as though it's easy for me to get back on track, is because I know what it's like to feel good. I know what it's like to be at your best. And whenever I eat poorly and I fall off, I don't feel very good. I don't have as much energy. And whenever I get back on track, I always feel better. So I want to feel better, and you should too. So do your best to eat like your ancestors. And trust me, I know it's not easy, especially living in this Western world where we have all these foods that are not good for us. They're not good for anybody. And that's why obesity and heart disease and high blood pressure, it's an epidemic across the United States. And it just has a lot to do with the crappy diet that we have, but also just the crappy lifestyles as well. So when you clean up your diet and you reduce your stress, you're going to improve your health. And when you feel good, you're going to want to stay on that path. Luckily, one issue I've never had is I've never struggled with abuse of drugs or alcohol. And I drink every now and again, but I typically don't drink to excess. I might have a drink or a couple of drinks, but I don't even remember the last time I had a drink. And I was raised by people who drank a lot. I was around a lot of alcoholics and drug abuse. I never experimented with drugs, I think, because of what I saw growing up. But there are a lot of people that I'm still around, family members and friends, who drink to excess. And that's going to catch up with you. And so that's something that I've never had to struggle with. I know some people do. Drinking, I think the most important thing that you can do for yourself is, if you don't want to drink and you don't want to be doing drugs, you can't be around people who drink and do drugs. Surround yourself with the kind of people that you want to be like. And if you want to do better, well, then surround yourself with people who are doing better. Let's talk about dealing with injuries. So I sustained a ruptured disc in my back. The disc is pushing into a nerve, which causes pain in my left leg and foot numbness, which has been really frustrating because I've been dealing with that for the last 6 months. And I haven't been able to train Jiu Jitsu like I did previously. And sometimes it's felt like I've lost a part of myself, because Jiu Jitsu has been such an important part of my life, and also my good physical health as well. But what I've had to learn is just to have patience and just to keep moving. So no matter what your physical limitations are, you just have to move. And you don't have to go to the gym to be healthy. You don't have to get a bunch of equipment to be healthy. Sometimes it's just walking. And in some cases, that's all I do. I'll just go for a walk and just enjoy some time outdoors. I don't really push myself too hard any longer. I push myself up to that point to where I know it's going to benefit me. And one of the biggest issues for me personally is just learning to slow down, because I've always just tried to push myself to the limit. And there's times where my mind says yes, my body's telling me just chill. And that's what this back injury has taught me, is I just need to chill a little bit more, let my body recover. And that's been a really hard lesson, but I feel like I'm doing pretty good on that. I've taken up lifting weights, and I feel like that's really helped me out a lot. I walk more. And so I've had to substitute my jiu-jitsu training with some other activities, and it's been good for me. And so you just have to keep moving. And if you are somebody who hasn't done anything for years, trust me, you can regain good health. All you got to do is just start moving. And it can start with just taking daily walks. Walking is amazing. It's an amazing activity. Or stretching or yoga, just doing something physically. So my back injury has been a humbling experience, but it's also taught me a lot about just my own personal resilience and just staying focused on just moving my body and doing whatever it is I can do as long as it's not causing me pain. So if you're dealing with an injury or some type of health issue, I want you to know this. It's okay to slow down. Healing is part of the process. And sometimes the best thing you can do is just keep showing up for yourself, doing what you can do, even if it looks different than it used to. Let's talk more about Jiu Jitsu because that has been a game changer in my life. I've been training for over 20 years. I remember back in the mid 90s and I first saw Hoist Gracie in UFC 1. And I remember thinking, man, someday I want to try that out. And I found a jiu-jitsu gym, I think in 2003. I went in and tried a class and I just fell in love with the martial art and the sport. So over the years, jiu-jitsu has helped me out with stress. It's helped me maintain good physical health. It's very physical. So if you train Brazilian jiu-jitsu, you're going to sweat. Your heart rate is going to get up. You're going to improve your cardio. You're going to improve your strength. And it also is very humbling. It can help you out if you're looking to develop grit and mental toughness. Jiu-jitsu is definitely the way to go. Today, I'm a black belt. I run a gym. I'm a coach. And so the way that I train has had to evolve. When I was younger, it was all about me. It was all about going as hard as I can, pushing myself to the limits, trying to prove myself. And as you age, you have to learn to train smarter, not harder. And that's something that has been a difficult lesson for me because the mind says, you can still do certain things, and your body is telling you, hey, you got to be wiser. And I think that's one of the reasons why I have sustained so many injuries, is trying to push myself to the limits. And so that's been a hard lesson for me, but I really do feel jiu-jitsu has helped me out in so many different ways in my life. And without it, I don't even know where I would be. So for me, jiu-jitsu has just done so much in terms of stress reduction, keeping my weight down. Even when I start to gain weight because maybe I'm overeating or I'm stressed out at work or whatever it is that's going on in my life, jiu-jitsu has been one of those activities that I feel has allowed me to maintain good health, even under a lot of stress, even when my life has been a little chaotic. And so over the years, I've had to change up my training. I focus more on technique now, helping others, and enjoying the jiu-jitsu community. And that's one of the benefits I feel that is most important about jiu-jitsu that we don't talk enough about, is the community is amazing. And when you're around people who are trying to improve themselves, people who are looking to improve their health, or at least people who are motivated to get off their butt and do something. So you're around all these amazing people who are doing good in their life. And usually people who train jiu-jitsu aren't into drugs and alcohol. They're not out there doing bad things. These are people who are from all different types of walks of life. And I've just had some just amazing relationships with so many cool people through training jiu-jitsu. Let's talk a little bit more about stress management, which is something that I have not been very good at. And if you have any good strategies on how to manage stress, let me know in the comment section. I can share with you some of the things that I've been doing. The first thing is learning to say no and not taking on so much. I would always try to just cram my schedule with as much activities as possible, especially at work. and the stuff that I do in the community. And I've just had to learn just to back off a bit and take on the projects that I know that I can do without it overwhelming me. But that has been something that I had to struggle with over the years, just taking on too much and not learning to say, hey, I can't do that right now. Learning to say no is important. Also, training Jiu Jitsu definitely has helped me out with my stress. But as I've gotten older, I've learned that I just need more rest. I just need better sleep. And so I really do prioritize getting good sleep. Whenever I get good rest, I'm getting at least 7 hours of sleep a night. I'm going to feel pretty good the next day. But if my sleep is off and I'm overworked and I'm not doing the things that I know are going to lead to having a well-balanced life, then it's just going to throw me off. And this is something that I've had to work on to get right. And it's not easy for me because I like to be involved and I like to give back as much as I can give back. But if you're doing it at the expense of your health and your well-being, then you need to find ways to make adjustments, because you can't be of any service to people when your health and your wellness is suffering. For me, stress reduction comes from a few places. Obviously, Jiu Jitsu has been great for reducing my stress, definitely prioritizing my sleep, making sure that I get 7-8 hours if possible. Of course, eating well. One thing that I have done recently is I've worked on breathing, doing breath work. There's a book that I picked up called Breath, The New Science of a Lost Art by James Nestor. And I picked that up, I don't know, some years ago, maybe about 4 years ago. And I started to implement some breathing exercises. So every morning when I wake up, I try to do some breath work. During the daytime, I do breath work. It's really good just for calming you down, just calming your mind, especially if you're dealing with a stressful situation, or if you're just feeling overwhelmed, or if you can't sleep at night. Man, some of these breathing techniques have been super, super helpful. And of course, just reconnecting with nature, going for walks. It doesn't have to be anything extensive. Some people think they have to go, I don't know, to the mountains and go hiking to reconnect with nature. And just walk outside, get some sunlight, go for a little walk by yourself. To me, that does wonders as well. Stress reduction, super important for good health. It's a silent killer. It leads to all kinds of health issues. Even if you're eating well and you're exercising, if you are dealing with chronic stress, it can wreck and destroy your health. And unfortunately, I've had to learn that the hard way. And so some of the things that I do may work for you. You may have some ideas for me as well. I'm still learning how to do this. This has been a difficult part of my own personal maturity and becoming wiser, is just learning to let go of toxic relationships and surround myself with people who are healthy, people who are doing good things in their life. And when you do that, it's going to definitely rub off on you. So what can we take away from all this? I think the biggest lesson that I've learned over the years about health and wellness is that it's a journey. It's not as though you're going to arrive one day and you're going to figure it all out. It doesn't work like that. So whether you're dealing with an injury or you're struggling to manage stress, whatever it is, whatever health issues come up, and trust me, you're going to deal with something as time goes on. It's really about just finding ways to solve whatever issues that you're looking to solve, whether you want to reduce your stress, get better sleep, you want to lose some weight, whatever it is. And then once you achieve that goal, you have to figure out, well, how am I going to maintain good health? And there's always going to be something that is going to interfere with your life, because we live in a chaotic world. We live in a modern society where there's just like a ton of stress. There's all these things that we're having to deal with each and every day. And of course, health issues can come out of nowhere. You can get injured just walking out the door, getting out of bed, you can slip in the shower. Just so many different challenges that can come out of nowhere. And so for me, I've just learned to just do my best to address whatever challenges come my way. And I've also have made a clear decision that I want to have good health no matter what. I'm going to prioritize having good health. That means focusing in on having a good, healthy diet and being consistent, managing my stress, getting good rest, doing all the things that I know make me feel better. And this works for me. But again, if you have any other ideas, I'm really interested in hearing what all of you do to manage the craziness of life, and maybe you can share some challenges that you've had as well. And trust me, I've had plenty, and there's been times where I feel as though some of these challenges are just too much. And there's been times where I just want to give up even. But I just keep pushing myself because I know when I'm healthy and I feel good, I feel better about myself. I feel better about my life. And it's worth it. It's worth the pain of having to take time out of our busy schedule, right, to go and just maybe go for a walk. Sometimes maybe we just want to sit and not do anything. But when you go out there and you go for a walk, or when I go train Jiu Jitsu and I do some of the things maybe that I don't want to do because I'm tired, I always feel better. For my native listeners, I want to encourage all of you to look to your ancestors for inspiration. Their wisdom is still here. It's in the foods that we've been eating since time immemorial, our sacred traditions, and of course the value systems that have kept us physically, spiritually, and psychologically healthy for generations. If you made it to the end of the episode, I just want to say thank you for letting me share a piece of my story. As always, I'm really interested in your thoughts, so feel free to comment in the comment section. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Dr. B Teaches. I'm also on Instagram. You can find me there. My handle is 7Gen Podcast. And my podcast, 7 Generation Podcast, streams on all the major platforms. And as always, stay strong, stay healthy, keep fighting the good fight, and let's do our part to improve the lives for the 7th generation coming. All right, y'all, this is Dr. B. Till next time.